A museum in New York City specializes in turning people into human specimen. The owner, a highly respected man, was a careful killer, a psychopath. He didn't hide bodies. He preserved them, sold them, and put them on display in plain sight for everyone to see. No one noticed the pattern. People vanished, and new exhibits appeared. Then a father recognized something inside one of the exhibits, triggering a nightmare and making himself the next target. He alerted the police, who followed the lead and uncovered a chilling discovery in a mysterious container, and what they found there would shock the entire city of New York for decades. Amina Calder, 19 years old, disappeared on October 14, 2003, a Tuesday that began like every other weekday on West 145th Street in Harlem. She was 19, a sophomore commuter student at City College of New York, and late in the way she always was. Her Metro card sat half-exposed in the front pocket of her backpack. Her hair was tied up with a black elastic she kept losing and replacing. The small scar on her chin, earned from a fall in Marcus Garvey Park when she was 7, caught the light when she smiled. Her father, Daniel Calder, watched her from the narrow kitchen as she rushed around the apartment. Daniel had lived in the same rent-stabilized unit since 1989. Same radiator knock, same crooked cabinet door, same morning routine. He left for his maintenance job with the New York City Housing Authority at 6:30 a.m. Early mornings, long shifts, predictable routes. He measured his life in routines because routines made the world feel stable. Every weekday, Amina left the apartment at 7:40 a.m., earbuds in, backpack slung over one shoulder, promising she'd text when she got to campus. Most days she did. Some days she forgot, and Daniel would tease her about it over dinner. Amina grabbed a piece of toast, complained about a biology quiz, and reminded him she'd be home by dinner. She had class at Shepherd Hall, then a study session at the library. Daniel reminded her to avoid St. Nicholas Avenue construction. She waved without turning around and stepped into the stairwell. That was the last time he saw her. At 12:17 p.m., Daniel checked his phone during lunch. No text. He didn't think much of it. At 4, still nothing. By 6, he sent a message of his own. "You home yet?" No reply. By 7:30 p.m., Daniel walked to the 145th Street, St. Nicholas Avenue subway entrance, scanning faces as people poured out of the A and D trains. He waited through 3 arrivals. Nothing. He checked the bus stops along Amsterdam Avenue, then walked north toward campus, following the route Amina took almost every day. By 8, Daniel was pacing the apartment, replaying the morning in fragments. The toast, the quiz, the way she hadn't turned around when she waved. He told himself he was overreacting. Amina was an adult. She had friends, plans, a life that didn't orbit him anymore. At 10, he called her phone. It rang until voicemail. He left a message he would later regret for its calmness. "Call me when you get this." By midnight, panic had settled in his chest like a weight. He drove her usual route. Campus. Bus stops. The cafe she liked. Nothing. Her friends hadn't seen her. Her roommate said she never came back that afternoon. At 1:12 a.m., Daniel was at the police station. He sat in an interview room at the 28th Precinct on West 123rd Street, sliding a printed photo across the metal table. The officer filled out missing person report, asking questions from a checklist: clothing, height, weight, medical conditions. Was Amina depressed? Did she have a boyfriend? Any history of running away? Daniel answered carefully, each word scraping against his throat. "She wouldn't run away," he said. "She doesn't miss dinner." The officer nodded in a way that wasn't reassuring. A report was filed. A photo was scanned. Daniel was told they'd call if they found anything. They didn't call that night, or the next. By morning, Amina's bed was still made. Her charger was still plugged in. Her student ID sat on the dresser beside a Metro card last used at 8:02 a.m. at the 145th Street station. According to transit records, Daniel wouldn't see until much later. Eyes passed. Then weeks. The city kept moving. Classes continued. Trains ran. Posters went up on lampposts from Harlem to Washington Heights. ND, without realizing it, Daniel crossed the invisible line between waiting for his daughter to return and beginning to understand that something had taken her instead. What Daniel didn't know was that October 14th, 2003 would later appear again in an entirely different file, not at a police precinct, but inside an institutional archive where human names were replaced with something terrifying. The first year after October 14th, 2003 moved slowly enough to hurt, Daniel Calder learned the interior of New York City in pieces. Precinct lobbies, hospital corridors, subway platforms, church basements where missing person meetings were held. His days followed a loop that never resolved. Wake up in the apartment on West 145th Street. Check his phone. Walk to the 28th precinct if he hadn't heard anything. Ride the A train south, scanning faces without meaning to. By November 2003, the NYPD had logged Amina's disappearance under case status, active, no suspect. Detectives assured Daniel this was normal. People vanished in the city every day, they said. Most came back. Some didn't. They told him not to jump to conclusions. In January 2004, Daniel filed a request with New York City Transit for extended MetroCard data. He received a single-page response weeks later. Amina's last recorded swipe remained unchanged. Burr, October 14, 2003, 8:02 a.m., 145th Street Station, southbound a train. Burr, nothing after. He checked hospitals next. Harlem Hospital Center, Mount Sinai Morningside, Bellevue. Each visit followed the same pattern. A clipboard, a waiting area, a quiet shake of the head. No Jandas matching Amina's description. No unidentified patients admitted that day. Spring arrived. Trees bloomed in St. Nicholas Park. Daniel noticed because Amina used to walk through it on warm afternoons. He caught himself slowing his pace near the benches, half expecting to see her sitting there with her, earbuds in, pretending not to notice him. By June 2004, the case was reassigned. The detective Daniel knew by name was transferred. The new one spoke in careful phrases and asked Daniel to repeat information already written in the file. The tone had changed. The urgency was gone, replaced by procedure. Flyers came down, not all at once, just gradually. Torn corners, faded ink. By September, only one remained taped inside a bodega window on Amsterdam Avenue, curling at the edges. Daniel kept Amina's phone active. He paid the bill every month. He told himself that if she ever turned it on even for a second, it would ring. It never did. In 2005, the case status shifted again. Active, pending review. No one explained what that meant. When Daniel asked, he was told there were no new leads and no evidence of foul play. Without evidence, there was nothing to push. Life outside the case continued without asking his permission. New tenants moved into the building. Amina's classmates graduated. The city changed its posters, its storefronts, its priorities. But one thing didn't change. Every year, on October 14th, Daniel returned to the precinct and asked the same question. Has anyone found her? Every year, the answer stayed the same. And somewhere else in New York, in a building Daniel had never visited, under a department he didn't know existed, a record bearing that same date remained untouched, correctly filed, and completely disconnected from the word missing. By the time Amina's disappearance stopped being urgent to the system searching for her, her existence had already been secured somewhere else, under a classification that assumed no one would ever come looking. In April 2023, nearly 20 years after Amina Calder disappeared, Daniel Calder received an email he almost deleted. It came from City College of New York's Alumni and Family Outreach Office. Subject line, Community Invitation, Human Biology and Preservation Exhibition, American Museum of Natural History. Daniel wasn't an alumnus. Amina was, or had been. The message explained that the American Museum of Natural History in partnership with several New York universities, was hosting a temporary educational exhibition titled Human Form, Preservation, Study, and Ethics. Families of former students were invited to attend an opening day lecture focused on medical history and anatomical research practices. Daniel stared at the screen longer than he meant to. He hadn't attended an academic event since Amina vanished. Most invitations stopped coming years ago, quietly falling off mailing lists. This one felt like a mistake. He almost ignored it. What stopped him was a single line near the bottom of the email. Archival specimens from early 2000s collections will be displayed with updated ethical context. He didn't know why that sentence caught his attention. It didn't connect to Amina logically. It just lingered. On May 3, 2023, Daniel took the A train from 145th Street to 81st Street Museum of Natural History. The museum steps were crowded with school groups, tourists, strollers, noise. Nothing about the place felt ominous. It was too public, too clean, too normal. Inside, banners hung from the ceiling. Exhibit maps were handed out by volunteers wearing name tags. Daniel followed the crowd into Exhibition Hall 3, where a recorded voice explained the educational goals of the display. The lecture was short, clinical, ethical language layered over historical practices. Daniel listened without emotion, waiting for the urge to leave to pass. Afterward, attendees were encouraged to walk through the exhibition. Daniel drifted. Glass cases, informational plaques, anatomical models, preserved organs, everything labeled, measured, contextualized. It felt curated, controlled, safe. He reminded himself that he hadn't come here looking for anything. This was just an invitation, a way to mark time, a reason to say yes to something again. Near the back of the hall, a smaller section branched off, cordoned by a sign that read, Archival Specimens, Reclassified Collection. Daniel hesitated. People passed him, moving in and out casually. No guards, no warnings. He stepped inside. The lighting changed. Cooler, more deliberate. Glass cases lined the walls, each with a white placard beneath it. Catalog numbers, dates, institutional language. Daniel slowed without knowing why. He hadn't come here searching for his daughter. But as he stood in that quiet section of the museum, surrounded by objects the institution no longer wanted to explain too loudly, a feeling settled in his chest that had nothing to do with memory. It felt procedural, final, and uncomfortably close. One of the placards in that room bore a date Daniel had memorized for 20 years, October 14, 2003, and he had not yet realized what it was attached to. Daniel lingered near the archival section, letting the crowd swirl around him. Most people were absorbed in the placards, smartphones in hand, taking photos for school projects or social media. Daniel's attention, however, had narrowed to Specimen 77. He had tried to dismiss the unease, but the memory of Amina's surgery kept surfacing. The fall, the doctor's office, the pen he had held as he signed the consent form. He adjusted his jacket and stepped closer to the glass. The titanium clavicle plate caught the light again, tiny screws lining it in a pattern he recognized almost subconsciously. Then, as if the memory had been waiting for the right nudge, he recalled something he had saved on his phone, a photograph of the X-ray taken after Amina's surgery. The exact placement of the plate, the small engraving the surgeon had made along the metal, a patient ID number, something only a parent would notice, something he had memorized. Daniel felt a jolt. Could it be? No, he told himself. The museum wouldn't preserve a specific individual like this. It was impossible. He stepped back, trying to breathe normally, when a familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. Daniel, is that you? He turned sharply. Standing there was Marcus Reyes, an old friend from high school, now a museum volunteer. Marcus had been working in public education for years, guiding school groups through exhibits. He smiled, holding a clipboard. Marcus, wow, it's been, 20 years? Daniel said, his voice catching slightly. Marcus laughed, shaking his head. Yeah, something like that. Didn't expect to see you here. Daniel forced a smile. I got an invitation from the college. Thought I'd check it out. Marcus nodded. You're not the only one drawn in. That section's intense, isn't it? His eyes flicked toward the specimen behind the glass. They've been moving some older archives here. Some of these specimens haven't been displayed for decades. Daniel's mind raced. The titanium plate, the screws, and now Marcus, someone who had known him and Amina from her childhood, standing casually beside him. Could he say anything? Should he? Then his gaze caught the placard again. For a split second, he noticed markings etched faintly on the case itself, not part of the museum description, something smaller, almost invisible. A string of numbers, letters, engraved along the metal mount. He leaned closer, heart thudding. The code was familiar. He had saved it on his phone years ago, the ID the surgeon had whispered to him when the surgery was over, the one he thought he would never need again. It made no sense. How could it end up here? Marcus gestured toward the next exhibit, breaking the moment. I'll be here if you want to ask questions. Some of this stuff is confusing if you're not used to it. Daniel nodded mechanically, but his eyes stayed on the case. That tiny engraved code, invisible to anyone else, matched exactly what he had recorded in his phone. It wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. Daniel realized, in a flash of cold disbelief, that the object in the museum might be his daughter. But no one else, not even Marcus, had any idea. And the realization brought with it a terrifying question. How had she ended up here, cataloged like this for 20 years? Daniel's eyes snapped back to the glass case. The small titanium clavicle plate gleamed under the exhibition lights, screws arranged in the same pattern he had memorized from Amina's X-ray photo. He blinked, then froze. It wasn't just the plate. A subtle curve of the jawline, a tiny scar on the left wrist, barely visible through the preserved tissue, the alignment of the knees, the way the fingers rested against each other. Every micro detail that had been trivial on its own now collided into a pattern only he could recognize. His breath hitched. A rush of memories surged. The hospital smell, the antiseptic, the panic when she'd been wheeled in for surgery. He had photographed the X-ray on his phone, had annotated it obsessively, memorized every screw, every inch of the plate. He never thought he would. He would need it again. And now, it was here. Daniel's hands shook. He pressed them against the edge of the case, leaning in closer. His eyes darted up and down, tracing the tiny engravings on the metal. Numbers, letters, engraved so faintly most visitors would never notice. He remembered snapping a photo of that same code during her surgery. His stomach dropped. It matched exactly. He wanted to shout. He wanted to run. He wanted to pull the glass away with his bare hands. But around him the museum hummed as usual. Children whispered. Parents guided them from display to display. A group of tourists argued about the cafeteria menu. Nothing acknowledged the truth that was pressing against him like a physical weight. He pressed his forehead to the glass, as if proximity could confirm what his mind had already suspected. This wasn't coincidence. It couldn't be. The screws, the plate, the engraving, it all screamed one possibility that he had dared not allow himself to say out loud. This was Amina. Worst of IT is that the human specimen is a female specimen. The thought hit him fully, suddenly, with the force of 20 years of absence compressed into a single heartbeat. A hand rested on his shoulder, startling him. He spun. A security guard in a crisp uniform asked if he was all right, concern in her eyes. Daniel struggled to answer, words failing him. He stepped back, heart hammering, voice tight. I think this might be my daughter. The guard's eyebrows knitted. Sir, please step back from the case. You're making other visitors uncomfortable. The room felt smaller, colder. The glass seemed thicker than it should be. Every second he remained near the case, the realization grew heavier, more undeniable. Yet the institution treated him like a nuisance. For the first time in 20 years, Daniel truly understood that the girl he had lost was right here, visible to the world, yet unreachable. And the museum itself was now the barrier keeping him from her. Daniel froze in front of the glass, every detail of the figure inside colliding into a single, undeniable memory. The titanium clavicle plate, the screws, the faint engraving he had photographed after Amina's surgery. His chest tightened, breath catching, and for a moment he couldn't move. Then the memory hit fully. The hospital smell, the antiseptic, the pen he had held signing the consent form, the promise that she would heal. And now, here she was, behind glass, catalogued, untouchable. His voice broke the silence. "This ice my daughter. You turned her into a human specimen," he bellowed, every ounce of fury pouring out. The crowd froze. Tourists, schoolchildren, parents, everyone turned. Cameras flashed. The hall, previously humming with calm, erupted into whispers and gasps. Marcus Reyes, pushing through the throng, grabbed Daniel's arm. "Daniel, calm, wait." "No," Daniel shouted, shaking him off. Look at the shoulder, the plate, the screws, the engraving. This is Amina. I saw this after her surgery." People stepped back, murmuring. Some pulled out phones. Others stared, frozen, unable to process the spectacle. The crowd was growing, pressing close. Their astonishment magnified Daniel's own panic. A man in a sharp suit approached briskly, calm at first, but his eyes scanned the swelling crowd. Victor Sanderson, the museum director, stepped into view. "Sir, please, I need you to—" "No," Daniel roared, pounding on the glass. "I don't care about your rules. This is my daughter. She's now a human specimen." Marcus tried again, gently. "Daniel, maybe we should—" Daniel ignored him, voice rising over the murmurs. "I was here the day of the opening. I missed your speech. And now she's here catalogued like a number, and you think this is okay?" Victor lifted a hand, maintaining composure. "Mr. Calder, please step back. We can handle this." Daniel's fury only intensified. "Step back? She is my daughter. You can't keep her like this." His words reverberated through the hall. The crowd pressed closer, whispers and phone flashes multiplying the tension. The museum staff began moving toward him cautiously, murmuring into radios. Security appeared, forming a perimeter. Daniel's eyes burned on the figure inside the case. Every detail, the tilt of the head, the subtle scar, the plate, pushed his recognition into impossible clarity. Victor gestured toward a side office. "Please, we can discuss this privately. Come with me." Daniel shook his head violently. "No, I am not walking anywhere with you. She's right here. Everyone is seeing it." A teacher tried to calm her students nearby, but the crowd's energy was electric. Cameras captured every movement. Daniel's shouting echoed off the high ceilings, a furious blend of grief, rage, and disbelief. Security and staff converged, trying to restrain him, while Daniel pressed his hands to the glass and screamed once more, "She is my daughter!" The crowd surged, the director's calm slipping, and Daniel realized this was only the beginning. The system would fight him every step of the way. The crowd pressed in, buzzing with phones and whispered questions. Daniel's voice still echoed, "She is my daughter!" Security stepped forward, forming a barrier. One guard tried to guide him gently. "Sir, please step back." "I will not step back," Daniel roared. His fists pounded the glass. "You have her, you know it. She is my daughter. You transformed her into a human specimen." Marcus grabbed his arm. "Daniel, please don't let them drag you." The museum director, Victor Sanderson, appeared again, moving swiftly through the cluster of stunned visitors. He raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Mr. Calder, I understand your distress. Let's go to my office. We can review the archives. Verify everything." Daniel shook his head violently. "No, you've had 20 years to tell me. 20 years. And now you act like it's normal?" A group of security guards closed in. One gently but firmly tried to guide him toward the side corridor. Daniel struggled, spinning, yelling. attracting even more attention. The crowd grew, forming a barrier of spectators and murmuring voices. "Victor!" Marcus shouted, stepping between them. "Don't you see? He's not crazy. Look at the plate, the screws, the engraving. You have to—" Victor's calm demeanor faltered for a fraction of a second. "I understand your concern," he said, voice steady but eyes scanning the room for reinforcement. "But we cannot allow disturbances in the exhibition. Please, Mr. Calder, come with us. We'll handle this in private." Daniel's chest heaved. He glanced at the glass case once more, pressed his forehead against it, and whispered to himself, "Amina, I know it's you." A teacher moved her group aside, shielding students. Phones flashed. Someone called the front desk. The murmurs intensified. Then Victor spoke again, this time with the faintest edge of authority. "Sir, if you do not comply, security will escort you out. You have no legal claim here right now." Daniel's fury surged past fear. "Legal claim? I don't need a claim. She iced my daughter." One guard grabbed his arm. Another flanked Marcus. The crowd parted instinctively, buzzing with whispers and gasps. Daniel tore free, screaming, pointing at the figure in the glass. Look at her. This iced my daughter." Victor stepped forward, voice low but firm. "Enough. You are leaving this exhibit immediately. I will discuss this further in my office, but for now you must go." Daniel's hands shook, his chest heaving. He glanced at Marcus. "They can't just keep her behind glass." Marcus swallowed, nodding. "I know. But right now, let's get you out, regroup. Then we figure out the next move." As Daniel was escorted through the museum corridors, every step felt like a battlefield. He realized the fight wasn't just for recognition. It was for access, for truth, and for his daughter. And somewhere, hidden in the archives, the secrets of how she ended up here waited, silently, behind layers of policy and protection. The museum doors closed behind them, the low murmur of the crowd fading as Daniel and Marcus spilled onto Madison Avenue, New York. Daniel's lungs still burned from the shouting, his hands trembling from adrenaline. Cars honked, pedestrians glanced curiously at the father who had just screamed about the display, but none of it registered. "I can't wait," Daniel said, gripping Marcus's arm. "We need to trace this, now." A block away, a small cafe offered a brief refuge. They ducked inside, still panting, and Marcus immediately set up his laptop on a corner table. Coffee orders went untouched as Daniel's eyes darted between the street and the museum photographs he had taken. The confrontation was still raw, and so was the memory. The figure inside the glass, clearly female, every detail matching his daughter. He pulled up the X-ray photo of Amina's clavicle plate on his phone. "Look at this," he said, voice tight. "The plate, the screws, the engraving, all of it. And it's a woman. It's her." Marcus leaned closer, scrolling through scanned public archives. "Start with the accession numbers, donor notes, hospital records. Something doesn't make sense about how AMH-77, a female specimen, ended up here so soon after surgery. Hours passed in a blur. PDFs, invoices, supply chain records, and hospital forms filled the table. Each record seemed innocuous, but when lined up, they created a trail of movement, from the hospital to private collectors and finally the museum. Gender identifiers in the documents confirmed that the specimen was female. Nothing bore her name, but Daniel didn't need it. Every detail screamed Amina. Then Marcus froze, pointing at a yellowed invoice from October 2003. "Daniel, look at this. It matches her surgery date. Processed as a donation, archival preservation approved. The engraving, it's here too." Daniel's chest tightened. The confirmation of her being female, the very fact that it couldn't be anyone else, made his stomach knot. His daughter had been cataloged, preserved, and displayed. She had never returned home. Every piece, the hospital form, the plate, the screws, the engraving, and now her gender, lined up perfectly. A shiver ran down his spine. Whoever approved this had hidden her behind layers of legality, ethics, and institutional authority. The horror wasn't just the body. It was the system that allowed her life to be reduced to a display. Daniel slammed the laptop shut, heart hammering. They think they can hide her. They won't. I'll find every file, every record, every person who touched this. They won't keep her from me. Marcus placed a steady hand on his shoulder. We'll figure it out, step by step. Outside, the sounds of New York continued. Honking cars, distant sirens, the city oblivious to the horror Daniel was uncovering. He realized for the first time that the fight wasn't just personal. It was against a machine built to erase her existence, and every moment he hesitated allowed that machine to tighten its grip. If you enjoy stories like this, kindly subscribe and comment on your location and the time, 'cause more mind-chilling stories are coming your way. Daniel and Marcus sat in a cramped office at a small archival center a few blocks from the museum. The air smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant. The adrenaline from the museum confrontation still pulsed through Daniel's veins, his hands clutching the folder in front of him like it was a lifeline. Marcus had managed to secure permission to view the original hospital records and museum accession documents, bypassing layers of bureaucracy through a combination of persistence and personal connections. The documents were worn, yellowed, and typed in meticulous hospital shorthand. Daniel opened the first folder. His eyes immediately found the familiar titanium clavicle plate code, etched in small letters, the same code he had memorized from Amina's surgery photo. The dates matched. October 14th, 2003, the exact day she had been admitted, the day he had signed the consent form. Then he flipped through the museum's accession logs. The specimen had been cataloged under her surgery date, labeled only with the number AMH77, and categorized as female. Every transfer, from the hospital to a private medical preservation company, then to the museum, was documented, sterile, bureaucratic, cold. Daniel's fingers shook. The pattern of screws, the titanium plate, the engraving, everything was aligned. There was no doubt. His daughter had been reduced to a catalog number, her identity stripped, preserved, and displayed behind glass for 20 years. He exhaled sharply, voice trembling. It's her. It's really her. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. We have the chain of custody, the medical records, the museum logs. This isn't guesswork. Daniel leaned back, staring at the papers in disbelief. They think they can hide her. But this proves it. Every one of them, hospital, collectors, museum, they all knew. A shiver ran down his spine. The horror wasn't just that she was behind glass. It was the systemic complicity, the layers of authority that had allowed her life to be treated as property, as a specimen, rather than a human being. He clutched the folder to his chest. I've spent 20 years looking for her, and now I have proof. Marcus nodded grimly. But having proof doesn't mean it'll be easy. They can still fight us at every turn. Daniel's eyes hardened. Then we fight. We go through every channel, every record, every person. They can't take this away from us now. Not after 20 years. Outside, New York continued its indifferent hum. But Daniel knew the battle was just beginning. The proof was in his hands, but the system that preserved her as a specimen wasn't done with him yet. Somewhere between law, policy, and power, the fight for his daughter's dignity and truth had only just begun. Daniel stormed into the New York Police Department's Midtown precinct, clutching the folder of records. His hands shook, adrenaline still raw, but his resolve was unshakable. The receptionist looked up, startled. Can I help you? I need to see someone who handles missing persons and potential criminal investigations, Daniel said, voice sharp. This is urgent. My daughter, she's been preserved in a museum for 20 years. A few tense moments later, he was led to Detective Olivia Grant, a sharp-eyed investigator known for her meticulous approach. She took the folder, scanning the documents quickly. Hospital records, museum accession logs, titanium plate codes, and the chain of custody stretching from private collectors to the Metropolitan Historical Exhibit. This is extraordinary, Olivia said, her brow furrowing. If this is accurate, we'll need a warrant to access the museum's archives and possibly the specimen itself, And we'll need a medical specialist to confirm identity. Daniel nodded, pacing. Everything points to my daughter, Olivia. The plate, the screws, the engraving, the dates, 20 years, and no one knew where she was. You have to move fast. Olivia tapped her radio. We'll start gathering the warrants immediately. Keep all evidence safe. We're going to confirm this. Hours later, Daniel returned to the Metropolitan Historical Exhibit, intent on confronting Victor Sanderson, the powerful owner. The museum doors were closed to him. Security stepped forward as he approached, blocking entry. Victor emerged from a side entrance, flanked by staff. His suit was immaculate, his expression calm but controlled, like a man used to authority bending to his will. Mr. Calder, Victor said smoothly, I understand you have questions, but the specimen is private property, acquired through entirely legal channels. Daniel's voice rose, trembling with fury. Legal channels? Every piece of evidence points to my daughter. What did you do to her? You killed my daughter. Victor's smile was thin, professional. I obtained her from a reliable source. That is all I can say publicly. Daniel subtly tapped his coat pocket, where a hidden recorder captured every word, every record, every plate, every date. It's all here, and yet you think you can hide behind power and money. You offered me silence before, and now you think I'll believe it? Victor glanced at the security officers guiding him. I can offer compensation for inconvenience, Mr. Calder. That is the extent of my concern. Daniel's hands balled into fists. No, money won't fix this. You knew, you hid her for 20 years, and now you pretend it's just property. I will not leave until this truth is exposed. The security team pressed closer, subtly steering Victor back toward the building. Daniel didn't budge, glaring at the man who had, in his eyes, taken his daughter's life from him. As Victor was guided back, his voice carrying over Daniel's shouts, Detective Olivia's words echoed in his mind. A warrant was coming. A medical specialist would confirm the identity, and for the first time Daniel realized the fight was no longer just about proof. It was about forcing the system to admit the truth. The morning sunlight filtered across Central Park West as Detective Olivia Grant and her team arrived at the Metropolitan Historical Exhibit, warrant in hand. Daniel followed closely, tense and restless, his heart pounding with anticipation. Mr. Calder, Olivia said quietly, stepping toward him, stay back. Let us handle this first. The detectives moved through the museum methodically, checking each climate-controlled room and storage area. Officers scanned the inventory logs, cross-referencing the accession numbers. Detective Grant's partner, Detective Simon Reyes, frowned. Olivia, there's nothing. AMH 77, no record of the specimen physically present. Olivia's brow furrowed as she motioned Daniel to follow. Daniel, it's not here. We've checked every documented location and the case is empty. The mounts, the glass, even the display placard, they're all gone. Daniel's voice rose. What do you mean it's gone? It should be here. I saw it. My daughter, she was supposed to be here. Olivia placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. We understand, but we have to remain calm. We'll speak with staff. Inside the preservation wing, museum employees gathered uneasily. Olivia addressed them sharply. Who moved AMH 77? Who authorized its removal? The staff shook their heads, avoiding eye contact. One assistant stammered, I didn't touch it. Detective Reyes crossed his arms. No one here knows anything. Not a single person? Even internal transfers? A familiar face caught Daniel's attention, his friend Marcus, who had worked there for many years, looking down at the floor. Olivia noticed the hesitation. You, she said firmly, do you know anything? This is your opportunity to speak. His friend swallowed, voice barely audible. I didn't handle it personally. I wasn't aware of the transfer. Olivia nodded sharply, then turned to Daniel. We are documenting everything. It appears the specimen was moved off-site, but no formal records have been filed. We'll need to investigate further, track potential private transfers, speak with legal representatives, and issue subpoenas if necessary. Daniel's chest tightened, a mix of anger and helplessness boiling over. Olivia's calm, procedural tone grounded the chaos. "Right now," she continued, "all we can do is secure what information we have and follow the trail. We won't leave this unresolved." Victor Sanderson emerged quietly from a nearby hallway, flanked by legal counsel. "Detective Grant," he said smoothly, "we will cooperate, but any further discussion must respect private property and legal boundaries." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Sanderson, the specimen is gone from its documented location. You have the chance to clarify. Otherwise, your staff's denials will be noted." Daniel clenched his fists, fury burning. "You moved her. You knew we were coming. You've hidden her." Olivia placed a hand lightly on his arm. "Daniel, we are building the case. Yelling won't help locate her. We need to stay ahead, follow the evidence." The officers filed reports, checked inventory, and left no stone unturned. Outside, Daniel felt a cold certainty settling over him. The system had already acted, the specimen was gone, and now the hunt had truly begun. Whoever had taken her, legally or illegally, had gotten ahead, and the next lead could be more shocking than anything he had imagined. Detective Olivia Grant and her team had left the Metropolitan Historical Exhibit hours earlier, the warrant in hand but nothing to seize. Daniel lingered outside, chest still pounding, trying to process the empty display case. Victor Sanderson approached slowly, flanked by a few staff. His posture was calm, controlled, almost casual, like a man unbothered by chaos. "You'll find nothing here today," Victor said smoothly. "The specimen is absent. Perhaps a burglary?" Someone broke in from the back. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "A burglary? You're telling me someone stole her? And you didn't report it?" Victor shrugged lightly. "I chose not to involve authorities immediately. Considering the specimen's notoriety, its presence in online reports, I didn't want unnecessary issues. I'm confused myself. Perhaps an opportunist acted." Daniel's voice sharpened, trembling with disbelief and fury. "You're saying you had her, and now she's gone, and you don't even call it theft? You just shrug?" Victor didn't answer. Instead, he adjusted his cufflinks, clearly signaling the conversation was over. Security subtly guided him and his staff toward the museum's side entrance. Daniel glared after him, feeling the system itself mocking him. The police had come, done their part, and still he had no lead, no confirmation, no sight of the daughter he had searched for 20 years. Then Daniel's phone buzzed. A single message lit the screen, no name, just text. "Meet me at the Brooklyn Docks, Pier 12, 9 p.m. tonight. Come alone. Important info. Me." Daniel stared at the message, his stomach tightening. Marcus, his friend, someone he had trusted at the museum, and now the message suggested a secret lead, potentially the first real clue to the off-site location. He read it again slowly, feeling a mix of hope and trepidation. The hunt was about to enter a new, dangerous phase. The New York skyline stretched before him, indifferent. Daniel pocketed his phone, jaw set. Tonight, he would meet Marcus. And tonight, he might finally discover where his daughter had been taken, or worse, what had been done to her. Brooklyn, New York, Pier 12, 9:04 p.m. The docks were nearly empty, just the sound of water slapping against concrete and the low hum of generators from nearby warehouses. Daniel arrived alone, just like the message said. He checked his phone again. No new texts. Then Marcus stepped out from between two stacked shipping containers. He looked different than he had at the museum. No curator badge, no practiced smile. His jacket was zipped all the way up, hands shaking slightly as he shoved them into his pockets. "You shouldn't be here," Marcus said immediately. "If anyone followed you—" "No one did," Daniel cut in. "Start talking. How do you know where she is?" Marcus exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath all day. "After you were thrown out of the museum, I couldn't let it go," he said. "The exhibit logs didn't match. The specimen was listed as on display even after it disappeared. That means someone altered the records. Daniel stared at him. You hacked the system? No, Marcus said quickly. I followed the paperwork they forgot about. He explained it step by step. When large anatomical specimens were moved, they weren't logged as art. They were logged as educational material, shipped through a third-party biomedical logistics company based in Queens. Marcus had seen the name before, on crates, on invoices, always buried under layers of bureaucracy. I pulled archived transport manifests from the museum's internal server, Marcus said. One shipment went out 3 days before the police arrived. No destination listed, just a container number. He swallowed. I recognize the container prefix. It belongs to a private cold storage facility near the docks. Not medical, not public, just storage. Daniel's chest tightened. And the code? Marcus hesitated. The night you caused that scene, he said quietly, Victor ordered an emergency inventory check. I was in the room. I saw him unlock his phone and send a message. 4 digits. Marcus reached into his pocket and wrote the numbers on Daniel's palm. I memorized it, he said. I didn't think I'd ever need it. They walked together toward a rusted shipping container at the edge of the pier. No logos, no signage, just steel and silence. Marcus keyed in the code. The lock clicked. Inside, the air was wrong. Cold, chemical, heavy. A single industrial light flickered on, revealing a metal slab. The specimen lay there. Not posed, not displayed, stored. Daniel didn't rush forward. He noticed the shoulder first. The skin had been carefully removed, the musculature preserved with clinical precision. Then he saw the plate. Thin, deliberate, running along the clavicle, then the screws, then the spacing. The memory hit him before the realization did. He had signed the consent form himself. She was 13. The fall from the playground steps in Prospect Park. The surgery at New York Presbyterian Hospital. He doctors saying the metal would stay forever, Burr. Daniel's knees nearly gave out. That's her, he whispered. That's my daughter. Marcus's voice broke. Daniel, look closer. The plate wasn't just there. It had an engraved serial code. Daniel's hands shook as he pulled out his phone, opening an old photo he had saved years ago. Hospital discharge papers he had photographed, afraid he'd lose them. The numbers matched. Perfectly. Someone had known exactly what they were preserving. Then, from outside the container, metal footsteps echoed across the pier. Slow, intentional. More than one set. Marcus's eyes widened as the light inside the container flickered again. Someone else had the code, too. Footsteps echoed across the empty docks of Brooklyn's Pier 12, metal striking metal. Slow and deliberate. Daniel crouched behind a stack of crates, heart hammering, Marcus close beside him. The shipping container holding the specimen loomed ahead, its single flickering light barely illuminating the steel doors. Marcus whispered, voice tense, They're here. Someone's coming. Before Daniel could respond, Victor Sanderson emerged from the shadows, flanked by 2 men in black jackets, guns already raised. I see you've found my little trail, Victor said, calm and cold. Marcus, I never trusted you. Friends with Mr. Calder, yes. But loyalty? Not guaranteed. Someone had to watch. Daniel sprang forward. Victor, let her go. You have no right. A gunshot ripped through the night. Marcus screamed, collapsing onto the dock as blood spread across the wooden planks. Daniel lunged, but another gun was aimed at him. He ducked behind a crate, adrenaline and fury surging through him. Victor's calm voice cut through the chaos. Step back, Mr. Calder. Do not make this worse. The container is rigged. One wrong move. Daniel's eyes darted between his friend and the approaching SUV. Marcus, he yelled, trying to reach him, but Victor's men grabbed him, dragging him roughly toward the vehicle. Then the shrill alarm from the container blared, activated by movement near the restricted area. Detective Olivia Grant and Simon Reyes emerged moments later from the shadows, shouting commands, guns drawn. But they were seconds too late. Victor's men yanked Marcus into the black SUV, slamming the doors. Tires screamed on wet concrete as the vehicle roared into the night. Daniel scrambled behind the crates, narrowly avoiding another aimed shot. By the time he peeked out, only the empty dock remained. The container stood silent and imposing, its door locked, the alarm still wailing faintly. He didn't know the code, and Victor's earlier warning about the rigged security system made him hesitate. Daniel's chest heaved. He had survived, but Marcus had been shot and taken, and the specimen remained out of reach, hidden behind steel and danger. Daniel crouched behind the crates, blood pumping, mind racing. Victor had won this round. Marcus had been captured, and the container, rigged and inaccessible, held the daughter he had searched for 20 years. The fight was only beginning, and the stakes had just turned deadly. It was just past dawn in lower Manhattan, the sky a dull gray, the streets still slick with last night's rain. The smell of garbage and wet asphalt hung heavy in the air as police cruisers blocked off a narrow alley behind a shuttered warehouse near Canal Street. Daniel stood with Detective Olivia Grant and Detective Simon Reyes as officers pulled a sealed crate from an industrial dumpster. A sanitation worker had flagged it after noticing the weight and the smell. When the lid was pried open, the alley went silent. Inside was Marcus. His body had been skinned with surgical precision, preserved, positioned deliberately. Not dumped. Displayed. A laminated specimen tag hung from his wrist, identical in format and font to the one Daniel had seen beside his daughter's exhibit at the museum. This one read only one word. Marcus. Daniel staggered back, bile rising in his throat. No, this isn't. It's him, Grant said quietly, already knowing. And this wasn't done in a hurry. She crouched, studying the cuts, the symmetry, the way the body had been treated like an object rather than a person. This is controlled, methodical. This is how syndicates send warnings. Reyes exhaled sharply. That settles it. We bring Victor in. Grant didn't look up. Not yet. Reyes turned. Come on, Liv. This is a signature. Same preservation method. Same tagging system. And still no chain of custody, Grant replied. No video. No audio. No witnesses who can place him at the scene. If we arrest him now, he walks. And next time, he doesn't leave a body where we can find it. Daniel's hands curled into fists. So he kills my friend and laughs behind glass offices? Grant stood and faced him. He wants you reckless. He wants mistakes. She nodded toward the alley entrance where bomb technicians were arriving. And that container you found? We're treating it as live. Daniel looked up. You believe him? That it's rigged? Grant's expression hardened. Yes. And not with a simple keypad trap. This isn't a bomb meant to stop thieves. It's meant to destroy evidence. Reyes added, We don't touch it manually. No guessing codes, no brute force. Grant continued, We'll get a court order. Bring in federal EOD, forensic engineers, and a museum conservation specialist. If there's an internal charge, we neutralize it remotely. If there's a biometric lock, we bypass power, not the keypad. Slow. Surgical. Daniel swallowed. How long? Too long, Grant admitted. Which is why Victor feels comfortable. Around them, the city moved on. Horns blared. Pedestrians passed without knowing what had been found in their garbage. Daniel knelt beside the crate, staring at Marcus's tag as it swayed gently in the morning breeze. His phone vibrated. Unknown number. One message. Make the wrong move and you'll join him. Daniel looked from the message to the arriving bomb unit, then back toward the city skyline. Victor was watching. The container was a ticking threat, and opening it safely was now the only way forward, before more bodies were turned into exhibit. The container was moved at dawn, not opened, not touched. A flatbed truck escorted by NYPD and unmarked federal vehicles rolled slowly across the Manhattan Bridge, headed for a secure forensic yard in Queens. Daniel followed in the back seat of an FBI SUV, hands clenched, eyes fixed on the steel box ahead of him. Inside the yard, bomb technicians worked in silence. No keypad interaction, the lead EOD specialist said. If Victor's telling the truth, the charge is internal, pressure sensitive, fail-safe on repeated incorrect entries. So how do you open it? Daniel asked. You don't, the specialist replied. You disarm it. Robotic arms were deployed. Power was cut externally. X-ray imaging revealed wiring embedded behind the interior paneling. Improvised but deliberate. Not meant to kill thieves. Meant to erase evidence. This wasn't built by amateurs, another tech muttered. Someone planned for discovery. Hours passed. Then, finally, a nod. Charge isolated. Container is safe. For now. Daniel exhaled for the first time since Marcus died. Across the city, everything was unraveling. By midday, the Metropolitan Historical Exhibit was officially shut down pending investigation. Yellow tape wrapped the entrance. News vans lined Fifth Avenue. Protesters gathered, at first a handful, then dozens. Parents, sisters, old friends. A woman stood shaking in front of a camera, voice breaking. My sister disappeared 12 years ago after answering a private research posting. She said a museum donor helped her get the job. She never came home. Another man stepped forward. My brother went missing in Harlem. Victor Sanderson funded his scholarship. 2 months later, gone. A mother whispered, almost to herself. If he turned one child into a specimen, how many more did he make? The pattern was forming. Quiet disappearances, financial leverage, bodies that never surfaced. And one thing tied them together. Every name, every missing person, black. Inside a federal monitoring room in Lower Manhattan, Victor Sanderson sat in his glass office, smiling into a phone, unaware that the FBI had been listening for days. I've told you already, Victor said smoothly. I don't own any containers. I don't know Marcus. This is hysteria. He leaned back in his chair. That museum was my life's work, and now they're trying to bury me with it. An agent froze the feed. Did you hear that? She said. Hear what? Grant asked. He just said, containers. We never mentioned containers. Screens flickered, financial records appeared, shell companies, private collectors, offshore accounts labeled educational assets. One agent whispered, Jesus Christ. This wasn't art, this was inventory. Victor laughed on screen, unaware. Let them protest, he said. People forget. But outside his building the crowd was growing, and inside the container in Queens the locks began to disengage. As the final seal hissed open, the technicians stepped back. Daniel moved forward, heart pounding. Whatever was inside had survived firewalls, bombs, and 20 years of silence, and the city was about to learn what Victor Sanderson had really been selling. They approached the container slowly, boots scraping against the concrete. The air around it felt wrong, too quiet, too controlled. Daniel's chest tightened with every step. This was it. The end of the trail he had dragged himself through for months. The bomb unit confirmed the signal was neutralized. No detonation risk. No second chance. The final panel disengaged. Hydraulics hissed as the steel doors parted. What waited inside did not look like death. It looked like intention. 7 human specimens stood arranged in 2 precise rows, preserved with surgical care. Skin treated, muscles intact. Limbs positioned deliberately, as if someone had spent hours deciding how they should be seen. Their faces were calm, almost peaceful, and that was the worst part. Each wrist carried a white specimen tag. Clean, labeled, cataloged. This wasn't a crime scene. It was an inventory. Daniel took 1 step forward, and then he saw the names. Amina Calder, 19. Human specimen. Tag 23rd. Aaliyah Johnson, 18. Human specimen. Tag 41st. Darnell Price, 21. Human specimen. Ali 6th. Trey Washington, 22. Human specimen. Tag 14th. Jasmine Carter, 17. Human specimen. Tag 62nd. Malik Thompson, 19. Human specimen. Tag 31st. Daniel's knees buckled. Amina, not first, not last, just one of many. The realization hit harder than the sight itself. His daughter hadn't been taken because she was special. She had been taken because she fit a pattern, because she could be numbered, filed, displayed. Detective Grant said his name, but he didn't hear it. His ears rang as his eyes locked onto the tag hanging from Amina's wrist. The same sterile font, the same formatting he had seen in the museum. Human specimen. That was what his investigation had uncovered. That was what he had unknowingly walked her into. Across New York, news helicopters hovered. Live feeds cut in. Anchors struggled to keep their voices steady as the names were read aloud on air. In apartments, kitchens, and living rooms, parents froze mid-breath. Phones were grabbed. Old missing person reports pulled from drawers. Police lines lit up. My son vanished in 2019. My sister never came home. I told them years ago. Daniel didn't hear any of that yet. All he could see was Amina's name on a tag, a number beside it, as if she had never been his daughter at all. As cameras rolled and the city began to understand the scale of what had been hidden, one truth landed heavier than the rest. Victor Sanderson was gone. No arrest, no body, no trace. And somewhere out there, the man who turned lives into human specimens was still free. The city had not yet caught its breath. News of the 7 human specimens at the Queen's Yard spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with hashtags, eyewitness accounts, and families identifying names. Daniel watched the live feed on his phone, grief mixing with rage. Every new post, every photo confirmed what he had feared for months. Victor Sanderson's crimes were far from isolated. Detective Olivia Grant pulled Daniel aside. We need to move fast. If he senses the net closing, he'll vanish entirely. An arrest team assembled at Victor's Manhattan office in Midtown, the building that had once stood as a monument to his wealth and influence. But when they arrived, the lobby was eerily quiet. The receptionist had disappeared, desks were cleared, computers wiped. Victor Sanderson was gone. Daniel slammed his fist against the marble wall. What do you mean he's gone? He can't just... Grant held up her hand. He planned this. He's already moved. And from what we've gathered, this isn't a one-person operation. It's a machine. The FBI and NYPD pooled their findings. Financial records revealed a complex supply chain, shell companies that funneled money from museums, collectors, and private buyers to unknown locations. Shipping manifests had been altered. Some bodies had passed through private medical labs, some through obscure mortuaries. Records suggested corruption in local morgues. A few key officials complicit in processing the specimens. Daniel's stomach churned. So, this isn't just about Amina, or Marcus, or the others. This is a factory? Grant nodded grimly. A factory for human specimens. And if we don't stop it, there are more waiting somewhere else. Meanwhile, on the streets, outrage erupted. Protesters gathered outside museums, demanding answers. Parents came forward, identifying missing children, filing complaints, showing photos. One woman's voice cracked during a live broadcast. My brother vanished 10 years ago. Now I see him listed here as a specimen. I can't even begin to explain what this feels like. News crews swarmed the city. Every angle of Victor's empty office, the museum closure, and the container reveal was broadcast nationally. The pattern emerged. Most victims were black, mostly teens and young adults. The revelation added fuel to the public outrage, and every day more families came forward. In his temporary office, Daniel leaned over the latest chain of records. Each shipping route, each shell company, each manipulated record pointed back to Victor. But every time the team tried to trace him in real time, it led to dead ends. "Look at this," Grant said, tapping a financial ledger. He knew the container would be discovered. He planned the media storm. He's already vanished. And yet, everything points back to him. Daniel's fists clenched. So he's free. While these human specimens sit in containers waiting, while families wait for answers, while the city burns, Grant's voice softened. Not free forever. But yes, for now he's one step ahead. And that's what makes him dangerous. The machine behind the specimens isn't just bodies. It's the influence, the money, the network. And we've only just begun pulling at the threads. Daniel stared at the ledger, at the shipping manifests, at the emails and coded documents. Somewhere out there, Victor Sanderson was already orchestrating the next shipment, and if they didn't catch him soon, more human specimens would be added to his collection before the city could even breathe. The city had not yet caught its breath. News of the 7 human specimens at the Queen's Yard spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with hashtags, eyewitness accounts, and families identifying names. Daniel watched the live feed on his phone, grief mixing with rage. Every new post, every photo confirmed what he had feared for months. Victor Sanderson's crimes were far from isolated. Detective Olivia Grant pulled Daniel aside. "We need to move fast. If he senses the net closing, he'll vanish entirely." An arrest team assembled at Victor's Manhattan office in Midtown, the building that had once stood as a monument to his wealth and influence. But when they arrived, the lobby was eerily quiet. The receptionist had disappeared. Desks were cleared. Computers wiped. Victor Sanderson was gone. Daniel slammed his fist against the marble wall. "What do you mean he's gone? He can't just—" Grant held up her hand. "He planned this. He's already moved. And from what we've gathered, this isn't a one-person operation. It's a machine." The FBI and NYPD pooled their findings. Financial records revealed a complex supply chain, shell companies that funneled money from museums, collectors, and private buyers to unknown locations. Shipping manifests had been altered. Some bodies had passed through private medical labs, some through obscure mortuaries. Records suggested corruption in local morgues. A few key officials complicit in processing the specimens. Daniel's stomach churned. "So, this isn't just about Amina, or Marcus, or the others. This is a factory?" Grant nodded grimly. "A factory for human specimens. And if we don't stop it, there are more waiting somewhere else." Meanwhile, on the streets, outrage erupted. Protesters gathered outside museums, demanding answers. Parents came forward identifying missing children, filing complaints, showing photos. One woman's voice cracked during a live broadcast. "My brother vanished 10 years ago. Now I see him listed here as a specimen. I can't even begin to explain what this feels like." News crews swarmed the city. Every angle of Victor's empty office, the museum closure, and the container reveal was broadcast nationally. The pattern emerged. Most victims were black, mostly teens and young adults. The revelation added fuel to the public outrage, and every day more families came forward. In his temporary office, Daniel leaned over the latest chain of records. Each shipping route, each shell company, each manipulated record pointed back to Victor. But every time the team tried to trace him in real time, it led to dead ends. "Look at this," Grant said, tapping a financial ledger. He knew the container would be discovered. He planned the media storm. He's already vanished. And yet, everything points back to him. Daniel's fists clenched. So he's free. While these human specimens sit in containers waiting, while families wait for answers, while the city burns, Grant's voice softened. Not free forever. But yes, for now he's one step ahead. And that's what makes him dangerous. The machine behind the specimens isn't just bodies. It's the influence, the money, the network. And we've only just begun pulling at the threads. Daniel stared at the ledger, at the shipping manifests, at the emails and coded documents. Somewhere out there, Victor Sanderson was already orchestrating the next shipment, and if they didn't catch him soon, more human specimens would be added to his collection before the city could even breathe. The confirmation did not arrive with drama. It arrived with paperwork. Daniel sat in a sterile conference room at one police plaza, Lower Manhattan. The walls bare, the air smelling faintly of disinfectant and burnt coffee. A digital clock above the door read 9:17 a.m., April 14th, 2024. Detective Olivia Grant was already there, flanked by 2 federal agents and a forensic pathologist from the New York City office of the chief medical examiner. No one spoke at first. Grant slid a thick folder across the table. "This is the chain of custody," she said. "From the container yard in Queens to the temporary forensic facility at Bellevue. Every transfer logged, every seal photographed. No gaps." Daniel opened the folder with shaking hands. Photographs, evidence tags, barcode scans. Each human specimen documented not as an exhibit, but as a body, a person, a crime scene. The pathologist cleared her throat. "We extracted viable DNA samples from all 7 human specimens. Bone marrow, dental pulp, and tissue preserved beneath the clavicle plates." Daniel's breath caught. She turned a page. Specimen tag, HCA 230019. Female. Estimated age at death, 19. Daniel already knew. DNA comparison was run against national databases and a voluntary family submission you provided last month, she continued. The result came back this morning. Grant looked directly at Daniel now. "It's confirmed." The room seemed to tilt. "Amina Calder," the pathologist said quietly. "Your daughter." There was no gasp, no cry. Just a hollow sound in Daniel's chest, like air leaving a punctured lung. He stared at the name printed in black ink, official and final. Not a theory, not suspicion, a verdict. Grant didn't rush him. No one did. After a long moment, she spoke again. "The other specimens have also been identified. 7 families notified. Federal charges are being prepared. Human trafficking, murder, abuse of corpses, racketeering." Daniel closed the folder. His hands were steady now, but his eyes were not. "So he can't deny it anymore," he said. Grant nodded. "He already tried. Too late." One of the federal agents stepped forward. "There's more. Financial tracking and border surveillance just flagged Victor Sanderson. He's moving south." Daniel looked up sharply. "Private vehicle," the agent continued. "Using an alias. We traced Shell Company fuel cards and a satellite phone ping. Last confirmed location was Las Cruces, New Mexico, less than 80 miles from the border." Grant exhaled slowly. "He's running, or handing off control," the agent said. "Syndicates don't collapse with one arrest. They scatter." Daniel stood. "Then don't let him cross." Grant met his eyes. "Task Force is mobilizing. Border Patrol, FBI, Homeland Security. If he makes it across, it becomes international." "And he doesn't?" Daniel asked. Grant's jaw tightened. "Then this ends, or it finally begins." As Daniel left the room, his phone buzzed. A news alert lit the screen. "Museum specimen scandal expands. Federal manhunt underway." He looked once more at the folder in his hands. At Amina's name, at the tag number that should never have existed. This was no longer about recognition. It was about reckoning. Hundreds of miles away on a desert highway outside El Paso, a black SUV slowed as flashing lights appeared in the distance. Victor Sanderson checked his rearview mirror, made a decision, and turned sharply onto an unmarked road leading toward the border, unaware that the net tightening around him might expose not just him, but the entire human specimen syndicate hiding in plain sight. Victor Sanderson had been captured. The black SUV abandoned near Las Cruces, New Mexico, and federal agents had finally closed the net. Headlines blared his arrest across the country. Yet for Daniel, Detective Grant, and the families, the victory felt hollow. In Brooklyn, Amina Calder's funeral was held. Rain drizzled softly as Daniel knelt beside her closed coffin, fingers brushing the specimen tag from the container. now protected in a sealed sleeve. Her name, printed cleanly on the tag, seemed impossibly small against the magnitude of what had been stolen. He whispered it over and over, as if saying it aloud could undo years of horror. Across the city, families of the other recovered human specimens mourned. Each body had been preserved with the same meticulous cruelty as Amina. Parents stared at photographs, DNA confirmation letters, and the tags recovered from the containers, struggling to reconcile the perfection of the preservation with the brutality of the act. But grief was only part of the story. Investigators had traced millions of dollars funneled through museums, private collectors, and shell companies. Every ledger and offshore account revealed a highly organized operation, a syndicate, not a lone criminal. Lawsuits were filed immediately. Families demanded accountability for negligence, for lost time, for trauma endured. Attorneys cited complicity of museum staff and mortuary officials who had ignored warning signs. Still, no settlement could restore the stolen lives or ease the scars left behind. Daniel visited Victor's now sealed office. Dust and silence filled the space where so much planning had taken place. He imagined the horrors orchestrated here, the cold precision of the system that turned human lives into human specimens. Grant placed a hand on his shoulder. "We caught him, Daniel, but the scars remain. For every family, for the city, for you." Daniel's jaw tightened. He stole more than lives. He stole hope, and some of that we'll never get back. Even as Victor was processed, fingerprinted, and interrogated, the media covered every detail of the human specimens discovered, the ages, the names, and the extent of his crimes. Justice was underway but incomplete. For the families, nothing could erase the trauma. As Daniel walked away from the cemetery, a news ticker scrolled across screens citywide. Victor Sanderson arraigned in federal court next week. Preliminary hearing scheduled. Investigation continues into additional human specimens. Daniel felt the weight settle in his chest. The trial would be public, the world watching. But Victor's story was far from over, and the full extent of the syndicate's reach was yet to be uncovered. The courtroom of the Daniel Patrick Moynihan Federal Courthouse, Manhattan, was silent in a way Daniel had never experienced before. Not respectful silence, not order. This was the kind that came from people bracing for something they could not stop. Victor Sanderson stood at the defense table, wrists cuffed, suit freshly pressed. He looked relaxed, almost relieved. Judge Eleanor Whitcomb adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Sanderson, this court has given you an opportunity to cooperate. You may speak." Victor smiled. "Good," he said, "because I'm tired of pretending this was an accident." A ripple of unease moved through the room. He leaned toward the microphone. "I found them the same way every time. Job postings, internships, museum work, restoration assistants, modeling calls, heritage preservation grants. Young people desperate for opportunity always answer." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. "They came willingly," Victor continued. "Some thought they were going to catalog artifacts. Others thought they were going to be displayed. None of them understood what that actually meant." A woman in the gallery sobbed aloud. "I drugged them," Victor said plainly. "Enough to keep them alive. A body preserves better when it hasn't fully fought death yet. Less damage, less waste." Judge Whitcomb struck the gavel. "Watch your language." Victor laughed softly. "Language doesn't change facts, Your Honor." He looked directly at the families now. "I skinned them myself when I had time. When I didn't, my guards did it. They were trained. They understood reverence." Daniel's vision blurred. "Anyone who panicked," Victor went on, "anyone who screamed too much, anyone who tried to report me, museum assistants, mortuary clerks, drivers, ended up the same way. Indoctrination works best when consequences are visible." The courtroom erupted in shouts. "Order!" Judge Whitcomb yelled. Victor raised his voice over the noise. "I didn't hate them individually. I hated what they represented. Black bodies are ignored, underreported, easy to erase. That's why the system never noticed until now." A gasp tore through the room. "I turned invisibility into profit," he said. Skins sold to luxury buyers, chairs, wall panels, bed coverings, museums and horror houses paid in bulk. Organs went elsewhere, herbalists, transplant brokers. Nothing was wasted. Daniel stood up. You murdered my daughter. Victor looked at him calmly. I perfected her. The courtroom exploded. Bailiffs moved instantly, restraining people as screams filled the air. Judge Whitcomb was shaking with rage. Name the ringleader, she demanded. Name who financed this. Victor leaned back, smiling wider now. No, because there's always another container, another city, another curator who believes the lie. He glanced at the cameras. And even now, someone is watching how this ends. The judge slammed the gavel. Silence in court because there began so much noise, fury, and anger from parents listening to the horrifying ordeal. The court had not adjourned. Judge Eleanor Whitcomb was still seated. The cameras were still rolling. The stenographer's hands were still moving. Victor Sanderson was on his feet, flanked by his two private bodyguards, Evan Kroll and Miles Henley, as marshals prepared to reposition him for removal to a holding corridor. That was when the silence finally snapped. A man in the second row moved first. No warning, no scream. He surged forward and slammed into Evan Kroll, driving a metal biro straight into Kroll's left eye. The pen disappeared with a wet sound. Kroll collapsed instantly, screaming, hands clawing at his face as blood poured onto the courtroom floor. Before anyone could react, a woman from the opposite aisle lunged at Miles Henley. She grabbed his head with both hands and bit down hard, tearing into his ear. Henley howled, staggering backward as she clung to him, screaming a name over and over. The courtroom detonated. Parents rushed forward. Benches tipped. Someone swung a chair. Another man broke free and tried to kick Victor as he stumbled, his foot grazing Victor's leg before marshals dragged him away. For a split second, Victor looked genuinely startled. Then he smiled. Court police flooded in. Tasers fired. People hit the floor. It took nearly 2 full minutes to regain control. 2 minutes of screaming, blood, and raw grief broadcast live across the country. Medical personnel rushed to Kroll and Henley, applying pressure, shouting vitals. Kroll wasn't moving. Henley was barely conscious. Judge Whitcomb slammed the gavel repeatedly. Order. Order in this court. Silence returned in fragments. Victor stood there untouched, his suit splattered with someone else's blood. The judge leaned forward, her voice low and shaking. Mr. Sanderson, she said, you will name the ringleader now. Cooperate, and this court will consider a reduced sentence. Victor laughed. Not loud, not manic, calm. You see, he said, gesturing vaguely at the chaos. This is why I'll never talk. The judge's eyes narrowed. You understand that refusing may leave you exposed, even inside prison. Victor hesitated. Just long enough to feel it. Then he shook his head. I'll die either way, he said. At least this way, I die knowing I controlled the ending. Judge Whitcomb stared at him for a long moment. This court is in recess, she said finally. Remove the defendant. Victor was turned toward the exit again, marshals tightening their grip. What remained of his security detail followed, wounded but upright. They never reached the doors. The first shot cracked through the courthouse like thunder. Victor jerked backward as the round struck his chest. A second shot followed immediately, dropping Miles Henley where he stood. A third cut down Evan Kroll, already bleeding before anyone could react. Screams erupted. Agents drew weapons. Cameras shook. By the time anyone looked up, the shooter was gone. Victor Sanderson lay dead on the courthouse floor, blood spreading beneath him, the questions he refused to answer dying with him. Victor was silenced in public, but the ringleader he protected was still alive, and whoever ordered those shots had just announced themselves without ever stepping into the courtroom. The sniper was seen seconds later. A courthouse officer pointed upward, shouting as a dark figure moved between the glass and steel of a skyscraper across the street. A rifle flash, then nothing. By the time units reached the rooftop, the shooter was already gone. No shell casings, no prints, no panic, only precision. Police confirmed what everyone already knew. This wasn't revenge. This was a professional. Inside the courtroom, Judge Eleanor Whitcomb left the bench without a word, escorted out through a side door, her face drained of color. The trial she had spent months presiding over was over in a way no ruling could have delivered. 3 bodies remained on the floor: Victor Sanderson, Evan Kroll, Miles Henley. Paramedics worked in silence before finally lifting them onto stretchers, the sound of gurney wheels echoing through the room where justice was supposed to speak. Later that night, prosecutors announced charges against the parents who had attacked the guards. 5 years for the man who drove the pen into Kroll's eye, 2 years for the woman who tore into Henley's ear. The law moved swiftly where it could, but the questions that mattered stayed unanswered. Who ordered the hit? Was Victor silenced to protect someone else? And if one assassin had been waiting, how many others were still out there? As police widened the manhunt and analysts reviewed every frame of footage, one truth settled heavily over the case. Victor Sanderson may have died in that courtroom, but the person he protected was still free, and whatever came next wouldn't happen in public.